Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. I found the full account of President Heber C. Kimball when he was in England and he had a visitation there. We've already kind of covered this in the words of President Wilford Woodruff because he was aware of it and he also had his own experience. But this one is much more detailed. And not only does he talk about his own account, but he talks of another visitation to Joseph Smith, and then also to Sidney Rigdon, which we hadn't covered, and it's really interesting. And he talks about some unique points of doctrine, and I'm really glad that I found this. I came across this by accident as I was preparing for another video. That's typically how it goes. Okay, so before we get into it, I have updated the Flood the Earth Challenge for the second time today. I'm recording this at nighttime on the 19th. We are at 9,879 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been shared so far. We're trying to get to 10,000. So we're getting pretty close to that. And then you'll notice here, I've colored this cell green because I have two new reports of people meeting with the missionaries. And one of them has a baptismal date set. So let's all pray for that person that they'll go through and get baptized and join the church. But yeah, it's been a little while. I guess you have to go back to the 2nd of this month. That was the last time that we had a report of somebody meeting with the missionaries. No reports of baptisms so far for August, but just if anyone progresses after you give them a Book of Mormon, just let me know, and then I'll update it here. If they're meeting with the missionaries, they get baptized. After they're baptized, if they go to the temple, I'm tracking endowments and sealings, and we have had one report of that. So anyway, if you haven't joined already, please consider doing so. Just share a copy of the Book of Mormon, whether it's a physical copy or the Book of Mormon app, and put in the comments or send me an email how many you shared, and hashtag flood, because that's what I search to look for your email, your email or your comment. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this. This is in Journal of Discourses, Volume 3, and this is President Heber C. Kimball. He was first counselor in the first presidency, so the equivalent of what President Oaks is right now. And right here he says, "Have I not worked as hard as any of you for my living? Whoever saw me indolent or idling away my time around street corners or about the council house? No one, either of the living or dead. I'm always busy in striving to adorn my plantation, and my works show it all the time. I'm not preaching anything but what I practice. Does Brother Brigham preach anything but what he practices? No, he practices it day and night, and is just as virtuous and pure before his family as he is when he is before the public. And I would not give a dime for a man who is not. Does not the Almighty know all these things? Some may think that the Almighty does not see their doings, but if he does not, the angels and ministering spirits do. They see you and your works, and I have no doubt, but they occasionally communicate your conduct to the Father or to the Son or to Joseph or to Peter or to someone who holds the keys in connection with them. Perhaps there are some who do not believe much in spirits, but I know that they exist and visit the earth, and I will tell you how and why I know it. When I was in England, Brother George D. Watt was the first man baptized, and his mother was baptized directly after he was. The night previous to my going forward to baptize Brother Watt and 8 others, I had a vision. As old Baker used to say, quote unquote, of the infernal world. I saw legions of wicked spirits that night, as plain as I now see you, and they came as near to me as you now are, and company after company of them rushed towards me. Okay, that's frightening. And Brother Hyde and Brother Richards also saw them. It was near the break of day, and I looked upon them as I now look upon you. They came when I was laying hands upon Brother Russell. The wicked spirits got him to the door of the room. I did not see them till after that took place, and soon afterwards I lay prostrate upon the floor. That was in England, pious England, in the little town of Preston, at the corner of Wilford Street, and they struggled and exerted all their power and influence. That was the first introduction of the gospel into England. Now, let me pause right there because this is really interesting. I didn't know this aspect of church history in the United Kingdom, but what I do know is that we have a temple in Preston. It's the Preston, England temple, and here it is. And I guess it's kind of fitting that there would be a temple there, simply because that's essentially where the church started in the UK. But that's also where you had this attack of evil spirits on President Kimball. And so it's really fitting that after Satan and his followers tried to stop the church from gaining a foothold in England, that we would have this like a symbol of victory in that very city. And it kind of makes me think about the Liberty Jail in the Kansas City area, right? Joseph Smith was incarcerated here, and not too far from the Liberty Jail. So here we are on Google Maps. Not too far from there is the Kansas City Temple. It's not in the city of Liberty, but as you can see, it's only like a 12-minute drive. So I kind of like that. You have a place where for a time Satan struggled or fought, or he may have even had somewhat of a victory. But then in the end, the kingdom of God conquered and is now permanently in that place. So I like that. All right, continuing. That was the first introduction of the gospel into England. And I was shown those spirits as plainly as I ever saw anything. I was thinking of that circumstance while Brother Brigham was speaking this morning, and I was thinking that those spirits were just as much on hand to perplex this people as they were on hand there. I saw their hands, their eyes, and every feature of their faces, the hair on their heads and their ears. In short, they had full form bodies. Okay, so that's really interesting. I mean, we all know that, of course, but it's interesting that he's like, no, I was able to tell everything. They were very clear, and I saw all these details. If evil spirits could come to me, cannot ministering spirits and angels also come from God? Of course they can, and there are thousands of them. And I wish you to understand this, in that they can rush as an army going to battle. For the evil spirits came upon me and Brother Hyde in that way. There is one circumstance in the visit of those evil spirits that I would not tell if Brother Hyde had not often told it himself. They spoke and said to Brother Hyde, "We have nothing against you." No, but I was the lad that they were after. I mention this to show that the devil is an enemy to me. He is also an enemy to Brother Brigham, to Brother Jedediah, to the 12, and to every righteous man. When Brother Benson goes to the old country, he will find hosts of evil spirits, and he will know more about the devil than he ever did before. The spirits of the wicked who have died for thousands of years past are at war with the saints of God upon the earth. Okay, now just really quick, this is something that we talked about in a recent video. I think a lot of times when we think about evil spirits, we think about Satan and those that were never born. They were cast out of the presence of God, and they were cast here to earth, and they're doing their work. Well, it's not just them. It's people who have come to earth and took upon themselves a body, and they were wicked, and then they ended up going to spirit prison. But it seems, and this is not the first time that we've heard this. I've heard this a couple times now, that they, I guess, are kind of doing the same thing. So, in fact, in this video called another detailed description of the spirit world, and millions of evil spirits in these valleys. We went over what was said. Let's see, this is up here. We went over what was said by President Brigham Young, where he was talking about this. This was at the funeral of President Jedediah M. Grant, and he said, "There are millions and millions of spirits in these valleys, both good and evil. We are surrounded with more evil spirits than good ones because more wicked than good men have died here. For instance, thousands and thousands of wicked Lamanites have laid their bodies in these valleys." So it's really interesting to think about. It's not just Satan and his followers. It's the wicked who have come to earth. Okay, so do I ever pray that I may see them again? No, I do not. We had prayed all day and almost all night that we might have power to establish the gospel in England. Previous to this, Mr. Fielding, a clergyman, came and forbid my baptizing those persons who had come forward. I said, "Sir, they are of age, and I shall baptize them if they wish for it." And I baptized 9. The next morning, I was so weak that I could scarcely stand. So great was the effect that those spirits had upon me. I wrote a few words to my wife about the matter, and Brother Joseph called upon her for the letter and said, quote, "It was a choice jewel and a testimony that the gospel was planted in a strange land," end quote. When I returned home, I called upon Brother Joseph and we walked down the bank of the river. He there told me what contests he had had with the devil, which, by the way, I'm keeping track of those too. By the way, in case you're new, I have a spreadsheet called Quotes, Visions, and Visitations, where I'm tracking visions, visitations, dreams, near-death experiences, and end-of-life experiences where someone comes in contact with usually someone from the other side of the veil, and also evil spirits. And it's all in timeline order. You can access this anytime. The link for my spreadsheets is in the description box of each video. They're best viewed on a laptop or PC, because then you can double click on the cell and then read the account in column K. And at the very bottom, I have a tally by decade of all the accounts that I've collected so far. And so far, I'm at 67. And then to the right, you have all the visitors that have shown up through these different methods. Christ has shown up the most, and but also pretty high up there is evil spirits and Satan. We know that Joseph Smith, not just during the first vision or right before the first vision, but there were other times that Satan had showed up to Joseph Smith. So it's not surprising. There's one account that I still need to look for where when Joseph Smith was living in Far West, I guess Satan was like harassing one of his children. And we just read this recently. And he told Joseph Smith, like, you know, this is my land. This is my place. And we learned from the reason why he said that is because we learned this from David O. McKay's diaries, that Far West is the place where Satan killed Abel, right? Because the Garden of Eden was in the Kansas City area, specifically in Jackson County, Independence, Missouri, like in that area. Adam and Eve went and lived in Adam-on-Diamond, which is north and to the east of there. And then Far West is also northeast of Kansas City, and that's where that event took place. And it's another situation where, just like the Liberty Jail, something horrible happened. In Far West, there was going to be a temple constructed there. The cornerstones are still there. You can go there and see them. And I am absolutely certain that that temple will be built sometime in the future. So again, it's like reversing all these like victories of Satan that he's been allowed to have. And you have the permanent monument or the permanent symbol of victory afterwards in these temples. So anyway, okay, so continuing. So yeah, Joseph Smith, I know that he's had a lot of encounters with Satan and evil spirits. Okay, so Joseph Smith, there told me what contest he had with the devil. He told me that he had contests with the devil face to face. He also told me how he was handled and afflicted by the devil, and said he had known circumstances where Elder Rigdon was pulled out of bed 3 times in one night. After all this, some persons will say to me that there are no evil spirits. Of course, I tell you that they are thicker than the Mormons, quote unquote, are in this country. But the Lord has said that there are more of us than there can be against us. Who are they, says one? Righteous men who've been upon the earth. But do you suppose that angels will pay friendly visits to those who do not live up to their privileges? Would you? No. You would not like to visit with persons who lie and steal your goods and borrow and never pay. Would not you forsake such persons? Yes, you would. Will the Holy Ghost dwell with a man who will lie, steal, and swear? No. It is written that where the Holy Ghost takes up his abode, the Father and Son will come and abide. That is the God whom I serve, one who has millions of angels at his command. Do you suppose that there are any angels here today? I would not wonder if there were 10 times more angels here than people. And that's interesting. That's probably the case for any given temple or any time that you go to church and have sacrament meeting or state conferences, general conference, right? So 10 times more angels here than people. We do not see them, but they are here watching us and are anxious for our salvation. Will 1 out of 20 of those who are here today go through the gates into the celestial city? As I told some today, when passing through the gate at noon, when you go to the straight gate that we read of, you will not go through there crowded by hundreds as you do now. The righteous and wicked all mixed up together. You cannot go into the celestial world unless you are sanctified through the celestial law. He's talking about wheat and tares. You know, we don't need to judge people. I mean, that doesn't mean that we have to be blind or protect ourselves from people that are, toxic and stuff. But for any given ward or stake or anything, there's always going to be people that are true and people that are not. You're going to have wheat. You're going to have tares. It doesn't matter if they went on a mission. It doesn't matter if they were a bishop or anything else. We're all in mortality together, and we can't see into another person's heart or the things that they do in their private lives, even if they appear just perfect. So don't be surprised when it's all said and done, if not everybody goes to the celestial kingdom from your ward or stake or your friend of your circle of friends from your mission or whatever. Okay. Yes, and it will require obedience to every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. There are many who will feed the ungodly sooner than the saints, but I tell you, I will feed the saints first and the poor devils afterwards, if there is any to spare. But none of them should have food unless they worked for it. I am expressing some of my feelings and speaking of some of my actual knowledge of things, temporal and spiritual. The Lord has hosts of angels who are qualified to defend us, and they have information enough to march armies and to select leaders to lead them against the enemy of the saints. And the devil has leaders enough to march his armies against the saints. If men and women do not qualify themselves and become sanctified and purified in this life, they will go into a world of spirits. He's talking about spirit prison, where they will have a greater contest with the devils than ever you had with them here. Let me pause right here because in a recent video, I think probably this one, I've already forgot, but it talks about the fact that, it was that because Brigham Young was talking about President Grant, that in the flesh, Satan has power to tempt you and cause sickness and pain and things like that. But when you're a righteous spirit in like paradise, you have power over evil spirits. They can't do what they can do to you here on earth, because that part of your existence is over. But in this case, we're not talking about people that go to spirit paradise. We're talking about the people that go to spirit prison. He says they will go into a world of spirits where they will have a greater contest with the devils than ever you had with them here. It will not be 50 years perhaps before all of us here today will leave this state of existence. And then you will prove whether Brother Brigham and the rest of the brethren have told you truth or not. You know that the world has made a great deal of fuss and many lies about the devil pitching on to Joseph Smith when he went to get the plates. But they will get to a place where the devils will handle them worse than they did Joseph Smith when he got the plates. If they do not embrace the gospel, it will be so. Okay, and then I think there was one other thing. Yeah, just one more little tidbit later on. He says, I stick to, quote unquote, Mormonism, and I pray God that it may stick to me. I wish to take a course to love and fear God, that when I bow before him to ask for his Holy Spirit, I may have the communion thereof. Do I have that communion? I do, day by day, and I am not satisfied without it. If I get into a bad humor, the first thing I do is to pray, and I never am so angry but that I can pray. Often in the town of Mendon, New York. So right, he's talking in Salt Lake City at this point at the tabernacle. So he's talking way in the past. Often in the town of Mendon, New York, when I went out to pray, it seemed as though there were hosts of devils trying to stop me. They did not wish me to become a quote unquote Mormon. Have I ever been sorry that I became a Mormon? Have I ever regretted it? No, never for one moment. Okay, so that's all that I have for this, you guys. And just like other videos where we've talked about evil spirits and Satan, we do need to realize that it's real. The secular world would have you believe, no, there is no devil. If you're having like any issues with being bad, it's a result of your psychology. It's a result of your environment, your circumstances, things like that. But there is no devil. Well, there is. And it's important to know that, because when you live righteously, you essentially cast the devil out. There's different ways to do it, but living righteously, not inviting him into your home, is one way to do it. Another way is to go to the temple. And in this last general conference, they were really stressing the importance of angels. Well, we just read here that Satan has his forces, and the Lord has his to protect us. And so whenever we talk about going to the temple and coming out with protection, I think it can be spiritual as far as like protection against Satan. And that very well may include actual angels being there to keep them away as long as you live righteously. And then some people, they sometimes get confused when we hear that, you have these like evil spirits that are able to physically attack, in this case, President Kimball, but we've also seen it. If we go back here, let's see, we've also seen it with Wilford Woodruff and others. So in this case, so I have both accounts here from President Heber C. Kimball, as well as, if you go to the bottom, Wilford Woodruff. So between these two accounts, the people that were present were Heber C. Kimball, Orson Hyde, Joseph Fielding, and then I don't know their first names, but Brother Russell and Brother Richards. And then later on, so that was 1837. So just a year after the Kirtland Temple was dedicated. And then a few years later, yeah, this one right here, 1840, Wilford Woodruff and George A. Smith were also attacked, this time in London. And there were 3 holy messengers that appeared and cast the evil spirits out. And they gave like a blessing to Wilford Woodruff, and he was like injured, and they healed him through this blessing that they gave. And so you might be like, well, how is that? Because they're spirits. Well, you guys, there's a lot of things that we don't know, and I'm okay with that. I'm always content with not knowing everything. We'll know at some point. But one thing that's becoming apparent and clear to me is that maybe spirits don't exactly work the way that we think that they do. We kind of have this like preconception, which I think mostly comes from the wider, Christian world in theology, and then maybe even into other faith traditions where you think of spirits as things that are immaterial, you can't touch them or whatever. But I think things work a lot differently than what we realize. Because clearly there are times when you can actually have contact, like physical contact with them. And then whenever we read about the spirit world, it sounds like a very physical world. It's not the physical world that we live in, but they have buildings over there, and they have gardens, and, they have, just like what we just read from President Heber C. Kimball, as a spirit, you have eyes, and you have ears, and you have hair, and you have all the things that our bodies do. And the descriptions of the spirit world sound very physical, like the sights and the sounds, like the music, for example, or the incredible colors and stuff like that. So your spirit still has like senses, I guess, on that plane of existence, but we have this one that we're in, and I'm sure we'll learn more about it later on, but it really isn't as immaterial as I think some people think. We know from Joseph Smith that the material that makes up spirits, it's like refined matter, quote unquote refined matter. We don't know what that means, but it is matter. And so it sounds like there's some times where there's kind of like a intersection of worlds where you can directly interact with refined matter that these spirits are made of. So it's okay that we don't know all the answers, but I like to just kind of jot these things down, keep them in mind, and we'll find out everything later on. But anyway, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.